Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking to this woman who's not only a breast cancer survivor, but she understands the healing, the emotional wounds of cancer diagnosis, not just the physical, but also how the emotions play a part as well. She's also an advocate of hope and champion of courage. She empowers cancer warriors to strengthen soul nurturing techniques that allow them to release negative emotions, boost courage, and rebuild self-confidence. She's also an author who's written a book called Beautiful Lady. And she sees the humor, she sees the funny side of this as well. This is like everyone's journey, as we know. Everyone's journey is different, but if you could see the humor in your journey, it just makes it a lot easier to get through. So having said that, I'm now going to welcome Geri Maroney.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah. So I was, like I said, it was really good to sort of read about, someone who believes that the emotions can play a huge role. I always say that when I was diagnosed and people, was like I would say, was I surprised I got cancer? Yes. Was I surprised I got cancer? No, because I was going through something in my life that I'm not saying it was the whole thing, the whole plan. It was just that, but I think it played a huge part. Definitely played a huge part. So yeah, if you want to sort of tell us a little bit, like obviously when you were diagnosed, going forward, and where you are today.
Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity today. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate people who understand that the emotional part is necessary. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, in July of 2015, and it came, as it does for most of us, kind of out of the blue. I was going for my annual mammogram, and I never skipped my mammograms. I was right on time. So first public service announcement is please don't skip your mammograms. I went and they found a lump. I couldn't feel a lump. They found it on the mammogram. It was sitting very deep in my chest, close to my chest wall. So it would have taken me time, for it to grow enough to really feel it. So the good news was that we caught that early, but the bad news was that it just that happened in a 1 year period of time. I had not skipped. I was diligent. So going to the appointment, I could see. I kind of, how you sort of sometimes take a peek at the mammogram. I tried to take a peek and I saw something pretty glowing, and so it took me like 4 hours to get out of that doctor's office with a cancer diagnosis. And so we started that journey. And what I learned early on, my oncologist did the family tree, the cancer tree. And unfortunately, there was more in my family history than I had remembered. I had a grandmother who survived breast cancer and another grandmother who died of ovarian cancer. So that made this sort of magic cocktail of risk, and put me in a higher category for more aggressive cancers. And so we took an aggressive approach, and I did a double mastectomy, with what's called a deep reconstruction, where basically they cut me from hip to hip and took all that body fat that I didn't need and built my new boobs. And so when you talk about humor, I just can't even, it's 5 years or 6 years now, and I can't even say it without laughing because I knew that was going to come in handy. So we went, it meant it was going to be a very long surgery. It was a 14-hour surgery of removing the cancer, the breast, and then rebuilding. And so as I moved through that timeline of, getting to the point where it was surgery day, I was more afraid of being under anesthesia for 14 hours than I was of removing the cancer. Cause we sort of don't know what we don't know at that point. And so that was what was scaring me most was, had to write the will. I was an empty nester, had to, put all those things in order that nobody really wants to do, but it's necessary. So as I, it was surgery day, had gone, checked into the hospital. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was in my hospital bed waiting for my turn, right? Pre-op, my turn to go to surgery. And suddenly the entire floor of the hospital, the lights went out. The whole floor went dark. Like, if I wasn't scared before I got to the hospital, that right there sort of sent me, over the edge. I just wanted to get up and run away. I thought that it was, God telling me that don't do it. Just this is a bad idea. Don't go forward with this surgery. But of course, I couldn't stop things at that point. But what I had to do is really get to a place I'd never gotten before in my life, never had to go before, where I had to muster courage and strength like never before. And so when my kids were little, I have two daughters, and when they were little, they would, come home from school with some girl drama. Someone was mean to them, or they didn't make the soccer team or whatever. And I would tell them that they just needed to be big and brave, that they were the only ones who could get themselves through that situation, and that they needed to try their best and be big and brave. And as I sat there, the lights came on probably within maybe 3 minutes ish. Felt like a long time, but it wasn't that long. But what I knew is I had to get control of my emotions, because I didn't want to go into surgery scared. That was a 14-hour surgery, and I didn't want to go in scared. So I closed my eyes and really tried to focus. And this lesson of big and brave is like literally the memory just washed over me. Like I could hear myself telling my girls when they were little that you just need to be big and brave. And so that gave me like the boost of courage and sort of the words of God to say, no, the power wasn't shutting the power off wasn't a bad thing. It's all good. You just need to be big and brave. And so that was kind of my first sort of story about how my history and lessons that I had learned along the way were now coming back to me to really give me courage through this journey, because we need courage. We have two things, back to the emotional path. We have two things that we're focused on. One is the obvious, that's happening to our bodies. But the other is equally as strong and important and devastating, are the emotions of the grief of sort of grieving the life we had before, grieving the change in our body, the loss of trust. Like I was a business executive before cancer. I traveled globally. I did 70,000 miles a year, went all by myself everywhere, no problem. After my cancer diagnosis, I literally was afraid of everything, and I couldn't trust anything. I think, part of what I hear a lot of women say is with the cancer diagnosis, if I didn't know I had cancer, what else don't I know, right? So as I began the journey, I really began to journal, because my doctor had told me that was a really great way, get those emotions out, right? And so, what I've learned along the way is that the emotions, there really is emotional trauma with this journey. And if you don't kind of put a story to all those emotional feelings that are kind of knocking around in your head, that's what they do. It just sort of, causes. I ended up with PTSD, really, a really tough case of PTSD. And since then, I did research, and 80% of women often end up with varying degrees of PTSD. So in understanding that, what I learned was that's why journaling is so important, is so that you can put the story, complete the thought, right? And they're not great thoughts. We don't all like to be scared. We don't all like to mistrust. We don't all like to be angry. But if we take time through our journaling process to put a whole beginning, middle, and end to those emotions, we really can in a very healthy way, begin to release them so they don't end up, kind of the monkey on the back kind of thing.
It's just so amazing how you just say that, because it's so true. Because I say to women that they've got to understand as well that some women, if not all women, without realizing, you actually go through the 7 stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just sort of go, oh, no, I feel depressed now, but I'm not doing that. Oh, I feel angry now. I went through them. I mean, I don't know if I went through all 7, but I definitely went through them. And that's the thing that people have to understand, that your emotions, like you said, it was to the point. It's so perfect. It's because you said that it's important to be brave. It's important to have the courage and everything. But also, let's look at the other side of it. You know, you can have the strength, you can have the courage, but there's the resentment, there's the anger, there's the grief. They're the ones that suppress you, because feeling strength and courage, your body also moves forward and up, whereas anger and you sort of close in, so you're suppressing it. So I find that really, really good, because I believe, like you said, now I'm not sure if you went through it, but I mean, when I just before we came on live, I discussed that, was I surprised I had breast cancer? Yeah. Was I surprised? No, because of what I was going through. Do you believe also, if you looked back at your life in that period of time, there was something, like in my case, there was a lot of resentment in my case, a lot of resentment going on. There was resentment for my husband. We're actually, and I speak about it openly. I was diagnosed in 2018, and in 2017, we're pretty much on the brink of separating, because he started to grow and I was left I felt like I was left behind. And I was like, well, why is it that you get to grow and I get to, I have to, because we had our family business. So, do you think that plays a role as well?
I do. I think everybody's different, right? And we can't ever say that it's our fault that we got cancer, because we didn't do anything wrong to get breast cancer. But what I learned about myself during this process was that I was the do all, be all, absorb all girl. I was gonna, like, I sort of said, there was a perimeter around me, right? My close perimeter, my kids, next, my mom and others around me, and then, friends. And I was always the person that everyone came to with their problems. And so what I realized I had done up until that point in my life is I threw it on my back and I made it my journey to solve their drama. But what I discovered through this process, and a very dear friend of mine helped me understand that. He said, by doing that, I was taking away their journey with God, right? We're all given certain challenges. And so by me being the super savior, I was taking away from them, which I never thought of it that way. I just thought I was being, super helpful to everyone, even if they didn't ask me to be, So what I learned was, yes, I think that as women, sort of stereotypically, we put ourselves last most often. We take care of our children, our spouses, our extended family, and then if there's 5 or 10 minutes left in the day, we might catch a breath before we go to sleep and do it all over again. So, but what I learned is that had to change. Like that had to change very early. And one of the things I kind of promise I made to myself very early on diagnosis day was I was going to really be open, because there must be lessons that I was meant to learn through this process. It's such a terrible journey that I wanted to be able to see and learn what might be there. And there was a lot there. For you said resentment. For me, it was anger. I could not get over the fact that I was the one who had cancer when I was the one who helped everyone, sacrifice, whatever it was. And so for me, it was the anger part. And I'll share another story, because these all happened along the way. There was a day then I had made it through surgery and had gone through a good bit of the healing. And I was sort of getting back in the groove, right? I needed to travel for business. And when I travel, I just pay attention to me. I'm not the super social, talking to everyone around me person. So I got to the airport, checked in, and then in Denver, you go down an escalator to get on a train to get to the terminal. So I'd come down the train or down the escalator to get on the train, and I see this woman off to the side, like pushing her way through the crowd. Like clearly I thought she must know someone at the other end of the platform. She was pushing her way through. So I just went down, stood where I stood. Pretty soon it was me she was coming to see, but I didn't know her. She just pushed her way and sort of was next to me. And, I didn't really pay much attention because I didn't know her. The train came. I went and back and stood where I always stand. And she followed me. And she was like almost uncomfortably close to me. Like there were plenty of places to stand. And I thought to myself, gosh, lady, there's a lot of room. Why are you so close to me? But I just, again, didn't pay much attention. And then pretty soon she started the conversation and she asked me how I was doing and if I was having a good day. And I said, yep, I was having a good day. And how about her? And she went on to tell me this incredible story about how she was so excited to be going to see her daughter and her daughter's family, that they had let a disagreement and anger tear their relationship apart for years. And that this was the first time she was, going to reunite with her daughter. And then she touched my arm and said, don't let anger steal your joy. Don't let anger take life from you. Forgive yourself and forgive others. And I still have my sunglasses on, thankfully, because tears welled up in my eyes because I thought, how did this stranger know that those were the precise words that I needed to hear to rebalance and to get myself out of the cloud? So, I thanked her and wished her a really great journey, got to where I needed to get off, and she stayed on. And I looked back at her and she was like waving to me like we had been forever friends. And I say to this day, I don't know her name, but I can see her face and I can hear her words. And so, what I learned was that if we're able to release some of those really heavy emotions, there are gifts kind of waiting to come to us.
I agree totally. And I just love that story because it for me, in my hallucination, it sounds like the universe sent you someone. I believe in that. I believe that things happen for a reason and things like that. And people come to give you those life lessons. And and years before I was diagnosed, I was having a hard time with my family. And someone said the words, you have to didn't know anything about my story. This older gentleman, we call them elders, and he just looked at me and he said, you can't keep fighting with ammunition. If you want to see the change in others, they've got to see the change in you. Mm-hmm. And that's when I put my own weapons down, so to speak, and they saw the change in me. So I think sometimes we need those life lessons. And exactly, like mine was resentment, and mine was, why am I resenting? I was resenting my husband from doing what he's always wanted to do, but I could do the same. But yet I resented him. It was I hear exactly what you're saying, because I was the go-to. I would, to this day, if my husband said, oh, I really like a denim jacket, can you go and get it? And it's 4-hour drive, I'll drive 5 hours to get it. Yeah. Whereas the other side, he'll be like, I'm not driving that far for that. But it's not a bad thing. It's just because, like we said, it's not that much. We give them that much. And then we go, why are you taking everything from me? Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, because I don't think we're good about taking care of ourselves. I mean, I think, like I said, for me, I always put myself last because I wanted to lift everyone else up. And so what cancer taught me was I needed to lift myself first. And through my book, you said, beautiful lady, through it is the stories, the real stories, like the stranger in the airport, where I was given guidance and courage, like precisely when I needed it, because there were those days like I just didn't know if I could take another step. And so the sort of message to the audience is, you don't do this alone. Do not. That was my other very first lesson, was I didn't tell anybody I failed the mammogram. I didn't tell anybody I was going for the needle biopsy. I didn't tell anybody until the day I heard the words and couldn't not tell anybody. And so those are my control issues, right? Up until that point in my life, I thought there was nothing that I couldn't handle on my own. And I was, very wrong. And cancer is not something anyone should take on by themselves.
Absolutely, I agree. And if you don't have the support group, find someone in your area or in your community, because I know a lot of people don't have partners or family and things like that. So it's always advisable. And the rate of women, I just recently did research, and the rate of women who don't actually have a support system around them have a higher chance of cancer coming back than those that have the support group around them. So I think that's really important. But like you said, exactly, it's like don't tell anyone. I don't know. What do you think is going to happen? The universe is listening, guys. If you tell anyone, I swear on your life, if you tell it, and it's not like that. But I think it's that we try, like you said, we try and I want to deal with this. And
I'll just do it. I don't want to scare anyone. I didn't want to scare my mom. I didn't want to scare my daughters. I'll just do it. That's not the right way.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, your 14-hour operation can't really hide that. I'm sorry, you really can't
get that one done on a day off. No.
Exactly. So you can't just sort of, brush that under the rug and say to people, well, I just had a day off, But it's also important for them to realize what you're going through, because you need people around you to support you. You need people around you to encourage you. I know that there are people who, I call them negative Nancy's, and I love negative Nancy's, but negative Nancy wants to tell you that you're going to die. Negative Nancy is going to tell you that it doesn't work out. And it's like, negative Nancy, I am so sorry that you lost a family member, because that's where it stems from. I'm so sorry you lost someone, but I'm not that person. Like it got to the point where in conversations with people to be, oh, no offense, Grace. And I'm like, I'm not offended. I'm not that person you're talking about.
And once you share the news that you have cancer, there's a bigger universe than you ever anticipated who want to share, right? They want to share their experience with someone's cancer, and they have a solution for it. So if you just do this and that and the other, twirl around 3 times to the right in the middle of the road on a Tuesday, you'll be cured. So another thing that I did was I just couldn't take it, right? Because I learned my level of empathy was higher than others, and I couldn't take on. I just had to close off the wall, right? I couldn't take on anything but my own emotions. So I invented Cancer-Free Day. So in my world, I got to name it, and it was as many times a week as it needed to be. And my family would know that if it was Cancer-Free Day, there was no talk of cancer. Don't call me and ask me how I'm feeling. Don't tell me about your cousin's brother's sister's friend. And that actually was a very healthy thing for me, both because I didn't have to hear it from everyone else. One, because I didn't have to hear it from them, but also because I could give myself a rest for 24 hours. I could pretend I didn't have cancer. And that felt like a relief. I knew that it was, only a little bit of denial because it lasted 24 hours and then reality came back. But we have to give ourselves breaks during this process because it is difficult.
Absolutely, it sure is, and that's what like you just said. Like I remember telling my sisters, I told my sisters because my mum passed away with cancer, and because in my family I became the fifth member. However, it's not in BRCA. We're not in BRCA. We're just a large family of women, and so I remember telling my sisters, so. If I was like, excuse my language, if I was a shithead before, treat me like a shithead now, because I'm not dying, So I had to stop that. Hey, Grace.
Oh, how you doing?
And that drove me up the wall. And I'm not sure if this happened to you. It definitely happened to me where you say, is cancer one of the best things that happened to you? In a way, cancer woke me up. In my case, and I stood back, and I say to people, I detoxed a lot, and people think, oh, I detoxed, I stopped smoking, I stopped drinking, I stopped eating certain foods and all that. No. I detoxed my environment, my community, my friends, my family. I had to get rid of things that no longer served me with love, but moved on. Did you feel that you needed to do the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I was describing with what I learned sort of in hindsight as the pattern I had developed over my life in number one, taking on other people's problems. But number two, there were people who there too many negative Nancys and, that were takers. Like I just didn't have any more to give. And that was the first time in my life where there just was no more giving. And so, I did detox. I did. And that's, again, going to the emotions where I finally figured out, like I call it, name your monster, right? Like figure out what is your resentment? What is my anger? What is your fear? What is it? Keep peeling it down until you can, sort of get to the core. And then you do. There was another thing that this same person taught me, where the one I was carrying other people's problems, was to burn your worries, like to write them, like literally write them on a piece of paper, all the things that were so heavy in your thoughts. And then I went out to my fire pit and I read them and I threw them in the fire pit. And then it's such a, metaphorical, obviously, but also a physical exercise to say, you can no longer put that problem back together. It's in a million little ashes. And so for me, I'm a visual person anyways. And so that was a really like healing exercise to say, my life is now different because I have released those things or people or thoughts or whatever they were. And yes, I would say I am a better, more whole person now than I was before cancer.
Yeah, I agree with you because I was the same as well. I found myself. I was 47 and I found myself for the first time, because we tend to, we tend to hide who we are until something like this happens, and then it's like the world wanted, it's like the universe wanted to ruffle our feathers and say, "Hey,
yeah, wake us
I
up
really,
a little bit." Yeah.
yeah. So I believe that is so important. Now you go to say about the medical industry not supporting people, their emotional side, and I agree as well with that. I've spoken to many women who have gone through major surgeries like yourself. They don't find any, there's no one there to say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. You're going to feel this." Da 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 da. What's your take on all of that?
I agree completely. I think it's such a missing link. Like for myself, as I started to heal and, was going to the doctor like every, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks at that point. I think I was maybe 6 weeks post. My doctor started asking me this series of questions like, Did I feel okay? Did I want to hurt myself? Did I want to hurt someone else? And the first time he asked me that, I'm like, "Ugh, knock it off. No, I'm trying to heal my body. Just, cut it with the weird questions." But then, like, literally within days after that appointment, the PTS rock fell, the mountain slide, it consumed me. And that felt so wrong. Like, you should have told me that, like, legitimately along the way, that I would feel. There are those stages, and you don't go through them all, and you could skip over some and you spend more time, but they should tell us very early. I liken it to, like, a long time ago when I was pregnant. When I first found out I was pregnant, my gynecologist gave me a book that said what to expect when you're expecting, and it was all the phases and the emotions and all of that. Why don't we do that for breast cancer warriors? There is a real process that is going to happen in different phases and in different levels. And so that's my mission now, is to try to get to these cancer centers and oncologists to say, I understand it is not the medical industry's gig, right? He just wanted to give me the PTSD drugs, right? That was going to fix it. But we owe it to these women. They owe it to us to help make us whole, not just medically better.
And the thing with that is too, exactly like you said, because it is really important, because, you've just had your own breast removed. That's part of a woman's body. You grow up, you grow up knowing that this is what a woman looks like. This is how she feels. The breasts are here for this reason. The breasts not only are they there to feed children and things like that, they're stimulating, through, a intimate, moment, things like that. So it's really hard when you say to people, like, I've heard, I didn't have to do that myself, but I did hear that. I apologize.
Yeah, of course.
I've got a sore throat. But I did hear in the process that a lot of women was like, well, you're alive, aren't you? And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. Uh-huh. Shouldn't you? Yeah. I'm actually working on a summit that I'm going to host in October, and one of my speakers speaks on the topic of toxic positivity. And, it is generally that concept where you had this happened to us, and people say, well, at least it wasn't this cancer, or at least you didn't die, or you don't need your boobs anyway, you're old. And so, those kinds of things don't help us as the patient in this whole process. But it goes kind of back to what we talked about earlier with the cancer-free day, where we should give ourselves the power and the permission to stand up and say, negative Nancy, I appreciate that comment, and I know your heart is in the right place, but we're going to move on and not talk about it again. Yeah. Because the other thing was, I did lose my breast, right? But in the beginning, I thought, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But there is so much emotion tied to all of that, and the body image. It takes women a very long time to even look at themselves again, much less, heal and feel sexy and positive. And I just think we're not healing breast cancer in the right way. We just leave all that to everyone all on their own.
it's like, okay, we've fixed you. Go now.
Go. Yeah.
And it's like, and I say to people, and I say it in probably all my podcasts, and I don't want to repeat myself, but it's true, because once you get diagnosed with breast cancer, it's like you've got a tattoo on you. While you're living on this earth, you will never escape it. And what I mean by that is not that you're going to get breast cancer. I'm not talking that. But you're going to have to go through your tests. You're going to have to go through your annual checkups. So it's constantly there. I don't need you to throw your stuff on top of that. I'm already going through that. I'm already going through that process. But what about the support?
Yeah.
because something I learned recently, I don't know if you've heard of it, when you go for your annual checkups, it's called scanxiety.
Yep.
Now, the word itself, why would you call it scanxiety? And if it is scanxiety, why don't you get something or to help someone to go, right, this is what you're going to go through, but hey, try these tools because this will help you through that moment. Because I know for myself, when I go, I'm choked up, I'm
Yeah.
scared. I mean, I'm a lot easier these days, but in the beginning, I spent months. Like if my appointment was 6 months from now, for the next 6 months, I wasn't living. I
Yeah.
wouldn't
You're
even make
worried
an
about it.
appointment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because you just realize that it's like, well, and that goes with your next sort of question, can you some long-term emotional impacts on cancer? What you're right, your a question here is, can you describe some of the long-term emotional impacts of cancer and how women can help work to heal those wounds?
Yes. I think, that's exactly right. It took me nearly 5 years to be able to walk into the Rocky Mountain Cancer Center without like wanting to run to the bathroom to throw up. So it just is because it caught us off guard. Like it was such those words are a forever change. As you said, it's life before cancer and then the rest of your life. So I think for me and the long term effects, like you're talking about, I just so encourage women to you can sort of take care of it now, or it'll take care of you later, like from an emotional standpoint. And so I really, really like to encourage women to do the journal. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to write a book. No one has to read it. It's really just to get those emotions and those triggers, emotional trauma out of your head. And when you write that onto the paper, then like I said, in telling the beginning and middle and end of your story, if you do that on paper, it just heals you in a way that nothing else can. You can speak the words, but if you can, find someone to tell your story to, or record it on your phone or whatever, but it's the act of acknowledging that you had this happen to you and that these were the emotions and that you are okay in feeling every one of them, because you can't rebuild trust until you stop distrusting, right? And so it is, for me, it was that one point where I finally said, today kindly gets to be the start of my rebuild. But you can't build on sand. If you put it under the rug or ignore it, it's not and you don't completely solve it. It's not like you magically write things down and you're all better and clear and forever okay. But it is a step in this long term, right? We have to live the rest of our lives, and so many women, I've heard said a lot of time, you can come out of cancer two ways: better or bitter. And so we want to be on the better side.
Absolutely. And I love that because it is so true. That's what I mean about negative. I know people who, thank goodness, they were diagnosed with the most severe diagnosis, almost stage 4. They're in remission now and they're like, yeah, I'm going to die anyway. Yeah, I'm going to die anyway. And I'm like, if I was in 5 minutes of remission, I'd be thanking anyone and everyone. Thank goodness, thank God, thank Spirit, whoever you believe in. I get to live another day. Every day I'll be like so grateful, so thankful, so great. Whereas this person now I know has probably finished her, I think she's 3 years in remission, but still says to everyone, yeah, I'm going to die anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course you are, because look what you're putting out
You're
there.
missing,
And
yeah.
and especially journals. Actually, you can sort of see the ones behind me here. They're actually journals. They're my journals, and I've got journals everywhere. Wherever I went, when I went and did some work in Peru to heal myself, I've got a journal from there. When I went to Bali, I've got a journal from there, because people were thinking I'm just healing the body, but I wasn't. I was healing the mind. I was healing the soul. So, and it was really, really important. And, even I remember my surgeon saying, Grace, the thing is about women, they're not, scientists need to talk about how the mindset is really strong. And I'm like, where have you been, honey? Where have you been? Come here. Let me hug you. And I think, of course it is. But she's very much into, like you said, she's very much into women, regardless of your diagnosis. You're going in there and you're going to be not strong about it, because when people say be strong, be tough, be courageous, what does that even mean? But she's talking about how don't go in there as negative Nancy. Even if it's the worst diagnosis, you keep moving forward. You keep moving forward, because none of us know. None of us know. We always say, you could survive breast cancer. You could be, 10 years breast cancer free and then get hit by a train. And you sort of go, really? You just don't know.
Yeah. And
So
that's the hardest part is staying positive, right? And again, we deserve not to be positive all the time. Like the flip side to negative Nancy is the happy everyday girl. And so I think there's a balance in between where, as you're saying, we just recognize and give ourselves permission for the emotion of the day, right? There were some days I just couldn't stop crying, just could not stop crying. And I have a sister who's a sailor. It was actually when I was in after surgery, I was in ICU for 5 days and then in a regular room for 2. And so I had moved to the regular room on day 5, and that was when all the emotions, I could not stop crying, and the nurses just didn't know what to do with me. And so after, a little bit of time, they called my sister, who I'm very close to, and said, can you please help us? We don't know what to do for her. And my sister is a sailor. And so she sat with me on the phone and told me the greatest story about how a sailor gets through a storm. And I won't get it right because I'm not the sailing jargon, but the gist of it is that when the storm is so great that you are unable to safely maneuver through it, you strap yourself to the boat so you're not thrown overboard, and you steer your boat directly into the storm, straight on, and you ride it out. And that is such the analogy of what we have to go through during our cancer storm. Is there are days when all you can do is strap into the boat and ride it out, because it is a very heavy burden.
I just got goosebumps throughout my whole body, because that is so true. What you just said, sometimes you just have to go in the middle of it. You just blocking it out of your mind, pretending it doesn't exist, not looking at it. My husband always talks about it, always says, Grace, you need to face it. You need to look at it, because the moment you look at it, it doesn't become as scary as if you avoid it. You just look through it, the eye of the storm. That's seriously just left goosebumps all over me, because it's just so, so true.
Yep. Yeah. And so, sort of back to your question about the long-term things that we have to do as cancer survivors, it's remembering those lessons, right? Is that hopefully cancer is the hardest thing we have to deal with. But, if life brings us some other challenges, I think we've learned through our journey that how to handle them in a healthy way. And I also think, and I've learned through my journey, is that sort of once you get through where the lighthouse, you can see the light, you're almost there. I am so compelled to reach back and help my sisters, right? Because this is a hard thing. And so that's why, my book and these emotional stories that we share, because no one can walk it for you. You just have to walk it alone. I used to say, when people didn't know what to do, is it just turn your flashlight on and walk with me and we'll get through it.
But I just love that because it's so that analysis, just turn on your light and just go. I interviewed a lady who wrote a book, Walk Beside Me, and I remember saying to her, "Oh my goodness, as soon as I saw the cover of your book, it reminded me of," and she laughed and she knew exactly what I was going to say. And I'm not sure if you've heard the story of footprints.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. And she said, well, that's where I got the idea. And it just gave me goosebumps because that's what I do. I'm not sure if you do the same or something similar, where every time I think I'm having such a bad moment, I have to remind myself I'm not walking alone. I'm doing it. I'm going through it because, like you said, people, you can have, whether you have one person holding you or you have 15 people holding you, you still go through this alone. And it is hard. It is hard because there is triumph at the end, but until you know there's triumph, there is so much fear. There's so much, you choke up. You, like you said, the crying. Oh my goodness, I would try. When I say I would try, my husband wouldn't allow me. He would allow me there. He was allowing me to have my pity parties. He just wasn't allowing me to unpack my luggage there.
Yeah.
So I get that emotion. You just cry. You sort of think, wow, is this,
Well, you
is this
sort of,
really happening?
I talk with other women and I just tell them, cry until you're done crying. Like, just, if it's not done, then it's not done. You don't want to unpack in the island of pity. That's not the best place to stay. But don't say, I've cried enough today, I gotta stop crying. Nope, apparently you don't. You just gotta do what works and know that you're
Absolutely.
not alone, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that is so, so true because, and it's such a great point you just did there because you are allowed to cry. Even when it's the toughest moments, you are. And I still go and, there are days where I'll say to my husband, I need to go and cry now. And he's like, okay, you go. And he means that in such a good way because he gives me he gives me space to do that. It's safe for me to do that. So I'm like, okay, I need to go cry now. Whether I'm a Cancerian, whether that's the problem, I'm not sure. But I'm very emotional, so I could be 1 minute, I could be, and then cry the next. So, but it's quite funny because you're like me, you're here also to help women just diagnose because like I say, there are women who have already gone through cancer. It's not that we cannot help them. They're already on their journey. They're already writing their journal. And I love the fact that you said that because I don't know if you have gone through it. I love picking up an old journal and I've written like I'm the worst thing in the world. And now I look at it and I laugh so hard. And I think, oh, gee, Grace, like you're not that bad, So it's really good when I say it, it's good to go back to scars, not open wounds. So if it's an open wound, don't look at it just yet. When it's a scar, it's better. But, women, we're both here to help women just being diagnosed with breast cancer. So what are some things that you can share? As I said, I can't wait to get your book, and it's probably a great excuse to interview you again with the book. And but what are some things that you can say to ladies that are just being diagnosed with cancer?
Well, I always say, don't look too far ahead. Like, the journey can be completely overwhelming. And I know it was for me because I'm a planner, right? Like I know what I'm doing today and next Tuesday and a month from. That was part of my problem in the early stages of cancer. I don't do it quite so much anymore. But when I heard the words, you have cancer and I had to go through this, all I could think of was all those kind of really scary things. Like, number one, I didn't want to die because my girls needed me. Number two, I was an empty nester. Was anyone going to ever love me again? Number three, that just goes on and on and on. So what I try to tell women is really try to use try not to let that happen. Give yourself only a certain amount of time every day, and then you have to give yourself relief, because you just have to deal with today, right? We're going to back to the big and brave. We're going to do the best we can today, and then tomorrow we're going to do the best we can. And that's all. That's really, you get down. For me, I got down to that very simple day by day, and then you start to see you have some really good accomplishments behind you. You made it through your surgery or whatever it is, and then you start to build strength to go forward. But I think in the very beginning, don't do it alone. Ask as many questions and stay in that doctor's office until you understand the answer to every one of your questions, and lean on people. This now is not the time to be alone and strong. Now is the time to seek the love and support from those around you.
Yeah, to be united with your friends, your community around you. Like as we said before, if you've got friends and family, great. If you don't, look for support groups around.
Yes. Can I interrupt you just for a second? As
Absolutely.
far
No,
as
please,
support
please.
groups,
Yes.
we have I host a support group on Facebook called Rediscovering Happiness. If you find me on Facebook, you'll find that support group. Come and join it. It is the kindest group of women who are at various stages of their journey. And, talking about it, if you don't have a personal network or a community, things like that can be really real lifesavers for you to help you voice concerns and answer questions and whatnot.
Wow. And I agree, because the thing is to not everyone's having the perfect story behind their journey. Oh, yes, I have the perfect husband and the perfect children behind me and the perfect mother and the perfect sisters or brothers or what. No, not everyone has that while they're going through it. And I always say, don't ever think that when you have diagnosed with cancer, life's not throwing more curveballs. It's going to keep coming at you. The world keeps revolving. It keeps turning. It ain't going to stop because you've just been diagnosed. So like you said, it's great to go, okay, I'm going through this and this is happening right now. And I need to deal with it as well. Because if you don't need to deal with it, put it on a side. But if you have to deal with it, reach out to some people and say, listen, this is what I'm going through. As well as my journey, I'm going through this. You have children, and sometimes children, it's you reach out because you say, well, to other mothers who've gone through it. Okay, what's some things that you discussed with your children about what you're going through? Things like that, and it helps. I believe it really helps.
I think so too. We can all learn from one another and share, the aspects of our own journeys for the benefit of others.
Absolutely. And I think our story should be shared because, like I say in all my podcasts, we're still here. This is proof. If you want proof, we're here. We're here. You've gone through a double mastectomy, and you've actually had. I'm not sure if I'm not sure the terminology that you use for yours, because I thought it was an oncoplasma.
In the U.S., it's called DEEP. So it's DIEP, deep reconstruction. So probably a form of the same thing.
Yeah, because I heard about it from a doctor in Italy who was doing that sort of stuff, because there is that. Then there are women who have had the double mastectomy and they call themselves flat chest now, and there's that. There's me, who I was I was in an early stage. I just had it removed, the tumor removed, the 2 lymph nodes removed, and that was my journey. Then there's women who have gone through other things. So we're all different. But I just want, the viewers and the listeners to realize that it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter what you're being diagnosed with. There is always room to hope and to realize that, hey, I don't have to succumb to this, regardless of your diagnosis. So you probably, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it properly, but like someone who's like who's stage 1 probably goes, oh, well, I'm stage 1, I'm good. But gee, thank God I'm not stage 4. Well, hang on a minute. I can talk to someone who's stage 4 and they're 25 years cancer free. So don't write it off. Or
Right.
or you think,
Yeah.
well, you were stage 2 and I'm stage 4 and that's not going to work for me. Of course it is.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think, we can get all wound around, well, my stage was worse than your stage and you are an early stage and that doesn't really qualify. And my doctor told me this too. At the end of the day, breast cancer is breast cancer. And so, the emotions that you go through that are probably very similar in a category. You might go through different medical things depending on your stage. But, if we're talking about the holistic healing, you still have some component of the emotions that you should be dealing with so that you can heal more completely.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. So I just want to sort of like ask you if there's what would be for anyone who's just been diagnosed with breast cancer, what would you say would be the 5 most important questions, whether it's to ask your GP, your your oncologist or your surgeon or your family? What would be the 5 questions you think people should ask or women should ask?
For a second opinion, number 1. And then to really, like I said a second ago, stay in that doctor's office until you understand what is your cancer's name, what is its stage, and understand the treatment options. Because the more women that I speak to, the more sort of spectrum that I see, where some women are just doing what the doctor says because the doctor said, do this, do that, take tamoxifen, I think it is. And, there's a lot of side effects with that. And then there are other women who have decided to sort of pick and choose what they do. And then there's an extreme who, believe that they don't want to do anything medically and just change diet and things like that. So, to the 5 questions, I would just say, make sure that you understand what your options are and what the consequences of your options are. If you decide, like I spoke with a woman recently who's giving up chemo because it's just tearing her body apart and causing way much more trauma, drama, and injury to her body. So she's going to stop that, and understand that those are your choices as the patient. You get to decide. And then I would also ask what other kind of support resources they might offer by way of support groups or other emotional aspects that go with it. And then I would understand what your rights are if you're employed by someone, by a company. You as a cancer patient have certain rights. I learned that it's not the exact name, but I learned it was basically a cancer patient's Bill of Rights. And it really lays out what the medical industry owes us as cancer patients. Like I learned when I was diagnosed, there were a certain number of days between diagnosis and surgery that fell within this acceptable range to really offer protection to cancer warriors.
Wow. See, and I'm glad you brought that up because, see, I'm self-employed. We ran our family business, and now I'm an entrepreneur. My husband's a life coach, so that's great that you should say that because I'm not sitting where that side of it is as well. If you're working for someone, and what your rights are, which is, you hear a lot of people who, as soon as you get diagnosed, unfortunately, it's like this big cross. It's like, no, you might die on us. Well, I could die by walking across the street to come to work. So anything's possible. Like I said, I can't wait to read your book. I've got it. I get super excited because I believe when I read the books of people's journeys through breast cancer, it's like I get to know you. I get to experience your journey. And I can't wait. I honestly can't wait to get that book. The link will be below, so people who would like to purchase the book, the link will be there for them to be able to do so. Having said that, just curious, are you in the process of writing, or what's next for Geri? What's your next?
Yeah. So I've been working on some things. Like I said, I've put together a program to sort of walk people through the emotional healing. So it kind of narrows down to 3 steps. It's a release process. It's a realign, changing our thinking, and then it's a rediscover, where we get to and deserve to live our whole life. So I'm working on an online course in that sort of builds off what I started in the book. And then, there'll be another book, probably maybe in 2022, but I really am now, I feel like my duty and my passion to help the many, many millions of women who, will be diagnosed after us, and try to make their journey a little better.
Yeah, and I agree as well, because the thing is, it's unfortunate. I spoke to my surgeon, and she told me that when I asked her if the rate of breast cancer of women getting diagnosed was higher, and I said, is that because now medical, we've got all these fancy now, things, MRI and scans and all that, they find it? And she said, no, unfortunately, Grace, we're too westernized and more women are getting diagnosed. And I thought, oh, so it's a great, it's a good, well, when I say it's a good thing, it's not a good thing to be diagnosed with cancer, but what's good about it is the technology that's out there now can also detect early stage of breast cancer.
Yeah.
And I think that's great, because like you said, I didn't feel mine either. Had I not been diagnosed, it would have probably grown to a point where it's like, oh, okay, something's going on. I could feel something. And you know what I mean? And I think it's really important that women realize that. Don't put it off. We talk about it. I know COVID's around the corner. We're in our 6th lockdown as we speak. And I've got a medical appointment coming up. I still go because you're allowed to go to medical appointments. So if you've got, your annual checkup, or your, whatever it is, your follow up, your checkup, whatever it is, go and do it. Don't worry about the COVID. Go. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. So I'm so grateful to be able to speak to you today. I loved hearing your story. I've come out with so many wow moments, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, because I learn as well. I learn, it's not just a matter of being a breast cancer survivor, but I learn to be a better human being when I hear other people's stories. It makes me realize how I can actually help myself, because this journey in life, it just doesn't end with cancer, of course. You know what I mean? Life is life. You're going to be going on. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. So I thank you so much for that. And is there anything else you wanted to say just before we go, or anything else you wanted to share?
I appreciate, the opportunity out. The last thing I'll share is, I've been asked several times, what's my favorite quote? And so I'll just read it, because I pin it to my computer here. Yeah. It's vulnerability is not a weakness. It is our greatest measure of courage. So be vulnerable, lean on people, be big and brave, and we'll do this.
Wow. I actually like that. I might steal that quote from you, because it's so true. It's so true. It's not just a matter of have courage, be strong, be strong, be strong. What does that mean? I remember saying that. What does it mean? Until the penny drops. But thank you again. I really appreciate it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed today's podcast, and I look forward to having you guys listen in on the next one. And like always, I wish you so much love and light.